Loud.
Yep.
Okay. This is Deborah Stewart, and today I am interviewing Judy Tate. And I've got to know Judy through a workshop that we were involved in. And it's just a delight to be able to talk to Judy today. And I would like her to be able to tell us something about herself, where she is, where she's from, anything about this wonderful studio behind her. So, Judy, let's have you share some information about yourself.
Well, thank you, Deborah. I'm sitting here in a hot UK, I have to say, at the moment. Well, who am I? I am actually a qualified microbiologist, which not a lot of people know. But slightly later on in my career, I always knew one day I wanted to have a go at painting, but I was guided through down the scientific route. So that was something that came a bit later in life when I was in my 50s. And I very quickly fell in love with soft pastels, very quickly. We now live here in a place called Poundbury in southern England. And we live in a wonderful place called Poundbury, which has got royal connections. But one of the reasons for moving here was that the houses come with rooms over the garage. And this is a room over the garage.
This is where you're at right now.
This is where I'm at right now. I'm sitting over the car. But it's perfect for pastels because, you know, the one slight negative with pastels are they can be quite messy. So I love soft pastels. More and more my work has gone towards organic. And as I think in large thanks to you and one of your wonderful workshops, going more and more abstract. So yeah, here I am.
Yes, your studio is wonderful. I know I have looked up Poundbury and that just looks like a wonderful spot. And so you've got so much light and storage and it's a beautiful studio. So
my commute to work is through the garden. I mean, how tough is that? And of course, as I'm walking from the house to the studio, you know, I'm spotting things, and you know, a flower from one day to the next can change and open, or a tree becomes more dappled, or whatever it is. So literally, I don't go far for my inspiration.
Right. Do you spend a lot of time gardening also?
Yeah, I can't say I'm a great at digging and the harder work, but I find you know, deadheading and looking after the roses and tying things up and the clematis and watching them develop. So yes, I have minor green fingers, but of course it then leads me to thinking about the things that I like to paint. So it works well. Good partnership.
Yes. Well, I only have a little garden. I'm not a great gardener, but I tend to buy flowers that I want to draw, bring them home, stick them in the ground, and hope they come up again the next year. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. That's
Exactly.
my inspiration for gardening is
Exactly the same in this household. Exactly the same. In fact, my poor husband, he gets lumbered with all the watering, and you know, if there's digging to be done, it's him. So I take the nice side of it, and yeah. And I spend a lot of time in the garden sketching.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, let's take a look at some of your work so that you can we can talk about your work. I think your work is wonderful and a big admirer even before I met you.
Well, I have to tell you, Deborah, coming from you, that is words from God.
Oh gosh.
Words from God, because I just love your work, and your work hasn't, thanks to social media and you know your website, your work has inspired me for years. So, you know, thank you.
We're in a mutual admiration society.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, let's do a screen share and take a look at some. And then maybe at the end, you can share a website or where else people can look at your work. So we'll do a screen share. All right. Can you see this?
I can indeed.
Good. I want to press play. There we go. And we will just discuss these, whatever you would like to say about these, maybe how large they are, whatever you would like to say. And
Okay.
maybe what surface they're on.
Yep. Well, this one is primarily unison soft pastels on color fixed paper, which I do use a lot. This one is large, actually. It's about A1. Does that translate for you?
No.
Oh, okay. It's about 1 meter by about 6. That's meters, inches. So it's about 3 feet by about 2 feet, something like that.
My, that is really large.
It's a big one for me, and it was it's called Epiphany, and the reason it's called Epiphany is because it was a epiphany moment. I'd been sketching in the garden, and in fact, this goes back 2 or 3 years. I've always loved color. Color is my primary motivator, really. It's the color that gives me the excitement to carry on, really. And this is actually how our garden is looking pretty much now. Allium's out, the phlomis, the incredible structure of the phlomis. And it was an epiphanal moment because those magenta flowers at the front shouldn't be, because they in the actual sketch were very tiny. And I was having a bad day, and got a bit slipshod, and this is what happened, and I loved it, and it's still one of my favorite paintings.
I bet it's wonderful to see in person, with it being that large in such a nice large shape, or large size. Yeah,
it suits large. I mean, my paintings can be, and maybe it's something I need to look at in the future, we'll see. My paintings can be quite fussy. I mean, not in terms of accurate detail, but in terms of a lot of lines and a lot of marks. And again, this one slightly showed me the way. It's like that leaf in the bottom, well, my bottom right hand corner. I mean, is that a leaf? I mean, I know it is, but it's not a leaf as you would necessarily paint it, is it? And this was a big deal for me, and it was a big corner that I turned. So it's lovely.
It has a lot of depth, and not that you would need depth, but it's unusual. It is definitely your own style, which you've developed over the years, but I see a lot of traces of the things you do now in this one.
Yeah, the marks on the alliums. In fact, I've been sketching alliums again this week in the garden. It's incredible how every variety of allium is different, and following through the stages, those slightly more foreground ones, the slightly more purple ones, that's how it looks with the light coming through those lines. The ones behind, they're dots, and it's at what point the seed heads are at, and that just completely fascinates me. But I don't want to be detailed about it. I don't want to be botanical.
Right.
I just want the impression.
Right. Yes. Lovely. And this is interesting. Tell us about this.
Okay, so I do a lot of sketching. I just find it so much easier to sketch in water-based, or primarily water-based media, and then make some notes, as you can see. This was in 2021, nasturtium and scabious, natural bedfellows. And then I went on to talk about the colours, but this is entirely for my benefit. So that long, hard winter in the UK, I can come back to this sketch. I can, via my notes, as much as anything, take me back to that place and that moment. But I also find, as I'm sure a lot of artists, or most artists even do, spontaneous mark making in the moment. And then when I come to paint it, which I did, and I think we've got the painting that came out of this in this series of photos. I will try very hard not to look at the photograph. What I want to do is try and replicate the sort of mark making that came out whilst I was sketching. Doesn't always work, and sometimes I do have to get the photographs out, but the sketch is more about the color, the bold mark making, and the notes are to remind me where I was and what I was doing.
Yeah, so that impression in the moment that you can take back with you and then revisit later when that garden is not there, but that experience of being there.
Exactly.
Yes.
And also to be even 2 steps removed from the reality, because I don't think I'm a natural abstract painter at all. And it's the hard part of what I'm trying to do with my work is to become more abstract, but still have a sense of what's going on.
Right. So in this loose watercolor impression, you're able to simplify, abstract down to really essential colors and shapes, and leave out the detail of what was that, what flower was that? That could be any flower.
Exactly. I mean, the green leaf next to the scabious flower head, those few sketchy lines that would have taken me seconds, because I do try and do these in a fair hurry. They're enough. They're enough of what I need to know in the painting. The same with the flower heads. The painting, in actual fact, did change quite a lot from this. But you can see the connections. I did rethink the composition slightly. So again, it's good practice. It's good work process for me to be thinking, okay, well, can I improve on the format? Can I, and so on. So yeah, there's a lot going on there.
I love that idea of creating these watercolor sketches and then referring to those later instead of a photograph of the actual flowers.
Yeah, no, it wasn't something I ever necessarily thought I would do, because when I started out, when I retrained from scientific to artistic, that's quite a shift in sides of brain. And I have to say, I thought, no, I don't need to sketch, I can do this and I can do that, and the pastels will do it all for me. Of course, that's rubbish. And I'm more and more, I actually enjoy the sketching side of it as much as I do the painting, coming on to the final painting. And it's something I refer back to. I've got piles of sketchbooks now, and they probably actually give me the biggest joy in a way, because they stay with me.
It's a very important part of your process. Yes,
it is now. Yeah, it took me a while to learn that, but yeah, it is now.
I feel the same way about the contour drawing that I do. I wouldn't, it's so important to be in the moment. I think is, it's almost like meditation. So I don't know if you feel that way when you're doing something like this, but just being in the moment with what you were experiencing.
Definitely. I can, yeah, all the senses are alerted, but in the right way, in the positive way. Yeah, I mean, I certainly look at painting and art and everything associated with that as my therapy, actually, I have to say.
Yep. Okay, well, let's move on. And
okay, so this came out of the sketch. I mean, the things I like about it, if you were to say to me, which one will you have on your wall, I'd actually probably prefer to have the sketch. I was successful, I think, with the sense of the breeze and the movement in the background, but I think I went a bit far with the scabious at the front. But nevertheless, you can see how this much larger mark making was taken from the sketch and not from any photographs I looked at. And the colorways as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. It's nice to see that transition from that loose sketch to translating it into the mark making. And, there's a bit more detail, but it's not a botanical rendition. So,
I haven't got the patience
no,
for botanical.
right. I
I
might
love
have when I
botanical,
was
but
19, but not anymore. So,
yeah, no, I just want more and more freedom with what I do. You
yes,
know,
freedom. Very,
emotion, actually.
yes.
Do you think? Color,
Yes.
the color, and the bolder or the more cryptic you can be for the mark making. I think that all adds to the emotion of the painting rather than the reality of the painting.
Well, your sense of color is just so wonderful.
Thank you.
I think that is, to me, one of your great strengths is your sense of color and composition. And you're right, with the movement of the lines and the direction of the background, there is breeze, sunlight. It's a really wonderful painting.
Thank you. Can we have these conversations more often?
Yes, I'll show you mine, and you can give me some compliments, and you can
Okay,
give me yours.
that's the deal. I'd
We all,
love to.
oh, I
Okay.
love the colors in this. These are some favorite colors of mine. So,
Well, this was very much inspired by the Zoom workshop I did with you. And it was really after Epiphany. I should really call it Epiphany 2, because what you talked about in the workshop, there was one particular thing that completely clicked in my head, and it'd taken 15 years to get it to click, and this is what came out of that. So in the last couple of years, this is probably the piece of work I'm most pleased with.
oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And tell me what you are happy with about this.
Well, there were a couple of things. I've primarily used substrate-wise color fix, which I still love. Bonus of color fix being you can apply water or pure alcohol. And I also use printing paper with gesso on, clear gesso on, with acrylic underpaintings. One of the eureka moments here was you recommending trying UArt paper, which I've never tried, and so this is on UArt. It's mostly Unison soft pastels. They're made in this country. They're easy to get.
They're wonderful pastels.
Yeah. And the other eureka moment was I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, because it's such a simple thing, but I completely missed the point. Was okay, you've got your sketches, and with what you were talking about, your contour drawings, and then this thought that you can then go through all your sketches or your contour drawings, and you can say, okay, well, I want some movement here, but then maybe I want something else there, and so taking the best of your preparatory work and mixing it up.
Right, yeah.
Rather than what I was falling into, which was, okay, well, there was scabious, and the scabious were out, and the nasturtium were out, so that's what I'll do. This was far more coming from right, how can I make this into a beautiful painting?
Using a variety of sources for your composition. Yeah. So,
and I love the UArt paper. We can't, here in the UK, we can't get anything less than 400 as far as I can find out. But I love it.
Yeah, surface makes all the difference, and it's good to experiment with different surfaces, I think, because some things are translate differently on UArt than they do on Colorfix, I'm sure. So
It's hard to explain, isn't it? If you're, in the early years, I think I only used Colorfix. And it's hard to explain what that sensation is when you use a different service, which is also good quality. And of course, you are, you were happy. You said it will take water, or I think you said pure. I haven't tried pure alcohol on it, but that was a big deal for me. I need to be able to do that.
I just find, well, I like to paint on UArt with water-based oils and get a really kind of a sketchy underpainting with a lot of kind of brush strokes. But I find the UArt is more painterly. That's how I think about it, is it takes the pastel differently, and it, to me, is more painterly. And these yellows that you have in the back, those are some of my favorite colors of unison, are those variations in yellows that they have. And I love those colors.
The yellows and the yellow greens.
Yes, the yellow greens, the dark yellows. Yeah, and I love these little mosaic pieces that you have started to add to your work too.
They keep coming in now, more and more. I don't know entirely where they came from. I think it was when I started sketching cow parsley. I don't know how that translates in the States. Or amni is another flower, and again, those marks in my sketches were my shorthand for what I was seeing, and more they're coming into the painting. So yeah, it wasn't a conscious thing at all, but
right,
they do more and more.
I think it is becoming a part of a signature of yours, are those, and those little marks. It'll be interesting to see where you go with that, where you go.
Who knows?
Right.
I certainly don't know.
Right. It's all, well, that's the exciting part, I find, is that you can never be quite sure where your art is going to take you, and you have to be open for those surprises and kind of for it to lead you along the way, instead of trying to force things to happen. It's like, that's nice. What can I do with that?
And you have to, I find I have to make sure I find the time for that, because I'm sure maybe you find the same. It can be very easy to get wrapped up in, there's an exhibition next week, therefore I must do this and do that. And it's important to stand back from that and literally play.
Right. I think playing and experimenting, and we would all like to say every single thing we do, but it doesn't end up that way. And I think it's good to be able to, it's good for me to tell myself, create with no end in mind, because that is when I think, when I'm not trying to please somebody or work towards something, but I'm just creating for the sake of creating, that things come forward.
I think there's a lot of pressure with social media to, I like you, I post on Instagram, and that last post on Instagram, I put it up and I took it down twice. Because it was more abstract than I normally do.
I love that, Judy. Yes, I was excited to see that. I love that. Yes.
But I got pure pleasure out of doing that. And but I couldn't decide if it was just for me, and that,
Oh, I think it's wonderful. You took something that I'm looking at here, and you took it a step further.
Yes, it progressed straight on from this, actually. Yeah, so this, in fact, is on the easel behind me. I do sometimes work in series, quite often actually. And so there's two that started the same way. They're actually both on UArt. That one's got the right hand one's got a bit tight. That one got the other one got a bit tighter, and I just put it in the bath.
Ah.
And I love what's come out from behind.
Well, let's take a look at this one, and then we can I'll stop sharing. I think this is the last one maybe that you sent me.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, and then we can see what is behind you.
Okay. This was me. So UArt, primarily unison pastels. And this was me having another attempt at making up the composition. And I'm nearly happy. I'm definitely not entirely happy. I think there might be a couple of fundamental compositional flaws. But I like the color. So I think it's something I will go back to if this one doesn't work out, and if I keep scrubbing it off and it and it doesn't work out, then I'll start again. But I'm getting closer and closer to what I think what I know I want the end product to be, the end result to be. But these are things that I've been drawing in the garden, sketching in the garden the last couple of weeks. Irises and clematis. And actually, bizarrely, I was getting quite frustrated because you commented on those small sort of circular or roughly circular marks that I keep repeating. I couldn't find anywhere to put them. I wanted them in there, and you can see 2/3 across in the middle. There was me trying to use a similar mark, either to show a negative shape or an iris bud. So we shall see where that goes.
Yes. So yeah, they're almost a signature in a way.
But hopefully they don't limit me, because I am not good at having no resources and thinking, okay, well, I like doing those marks and I like this color scheme, and let's see how we can bring this together. I'm not there. I have to have something to base it on.
Right. Well, it's don't have the expectation of yourself that you need to put those little marks in everything you do, because then it might become too much of a formula. So if they show up, they show up, but if they're not right for the piece, then they're not. So
it's where the brain takes over from the instinct. Does that make sense? I mean, you're a very instinctive painter, aren't you? A very instinctive artist.
I try to be. I think that I just think there's this balancing act between having a plan and being intuitive. And somewhat turning off your brain, or letting some of that analytical thinking go to the back, and bring it out when you need to assess, well, where do I need to go with this row? But a lot of times, well, I would say when I was painting that green piece behind that you see, I had to totally kind of turn off the analytical, what's the composition? Is that, it was more of an impulse of, I think it needs that, therefore I'm going to put that there, and not always like overthinking it too much. So,
and that's a really hard thing for me. And again, as you know, I loved your workshop, and you know, even though it was over Zoom, even though we had thousands of miles, you know, and if there, one of the bigger lessons I would take away from that is stop over analyzing, you know, and that's a real fight for me. I think I hope I'm getting a little bit better, but that's where I struggle.
Right. It's it's just all a process, and there are times when you do it more than others, and I just think there's a balancing act between having a plan and allowing things to take form. So that's how I try to look at it, but it doesn't always happen that way. So let me stop the share on this and see if I can find there we go, find my cursor here and bring that back up so that we can see the paintings behind you that you were talking about.
Yeah, so that's the one. Actually, I will show you that one.
I think I will. I was going to spotlight you, but I can't figure out quite how to do that, but this is good enough. So,
So this was after Epiphany with the and stuff, and again altering sizes, and this is the sort of thing with a little bit of more abstraction, really what I want to be painting. So going back to the last image you had, that's progressed a little way, but I can feel that's getting too tight, that's too much of an analyst. I like some of what's going on here,
right,
but not all of it. I like the color. So this one that I was doing in sequence, I was so unhappy with. I washed it right off, and I'm liking. There's actually no pastel on that. I'm just putting some lines back in.
There's a lot of nice things going on in that, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, you could be nearly finished with that. You wouldn't have to do too much to that.
That's the battle, isn't it? Not to overdo it now, you know. But I'm liking this one a lot more now.
Right. And where is that abstract that you had posted on Instagram that you kept taking off? We can maybe end with that image if you can find it. If you can't, that's okay.
It's here if you've got a minute. Oh, here it is.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Oh, that's it. I'm framing it.
I think that is wonderful. I love it.
And those marks have come back in.
Yes, they have. And I love it. Yes, definitely.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Deserves a frame.
I'll frame it. Thank you.
Oh, so what, as we wrap things up here, do you do some teaching in your area?
I do a little teaching. It's I am quite stretched for time. Myself and a team of people have recently set up a charity to do with art in the community. And so that's taken a lot of my time. So, I tend to want to paint when I've got spare time. So yes, I do some teaching to larger groups, but mostly I have a husband, so that's important. He's important.
You have to pay attention to them once in a while.
Occasionally, he does most of the cooking, I will admit. So husband, and then the charity and the team and the work that we do with that in the community, and we run an art club, and so painting is the sort of third part of the jigsaw, but in many ways the most important one. Well, apart from my husband, that is. Yeah, so that's how I spend my time.
Yes. Well, is there anything else that you would like to say or share before we wrap up our interview? I hope that we can, be able to talk once in a while.
I'd love to, absolutely love to,
That would be
Deborah. I
great.
just get so much out of knowing you and seeing your work, and so, you know, we could be a mutual admiration society any day.
I needed to hear that too, so thank you.
Oh no, seriously, I don't want to copy or emulate or any of that, but I know what fires me up creatively, and your work does.
Oh,
Most
thank
definitely.
you so much.
What to say? Well, to anybody that's listening to this and thinking, gosh, she was a scientist and then she became an artist. If I
Does
can do
that
it,
influence you? Do you think that has an influence on how you go about things, or
it's literally a fight.
it's
Do you remember the Betty Edwards book about yeah? And I read that about the time that I was intent on, you know, I really wanted to become better as an artist. I mean, I didn't call myself, like I'm sure most of us, I didn't call myself an artist for many years.
yes.
And I would say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And you know, all those demons come in. I can't draw, I can't do this, can't do that. You will find something if you want to be creative. You will find something.
It does take dedication.
It
It
does.
is more than just picking up a brush or a pastel once a month. It really takes dedication and almost an obsession, I think.
Yep. Oh, we're alike.
Yep.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, obviously family comes first, but you know, after that, I want to do this. This is what gives the joy, apart from family, obviously. And husband, who I must keep mentioning.
Right. Yes. Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you again, and I hope our recording turns out well. It is
Oh, if not, we'll just have to do it again.
It is still recording, so thank you, Judy. And why don't you share your website, or where can people see more of your work? Because I really encourage people to check out your work.
Thank you. If you just look up, or if you just Google Judy Tate artist, I'll come up on Facebook, Instagram, and I've got a website that I keep reasonably up to date. So Judy Tate, that's Tate artist, and you'll find me.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording.
And thank you, Deborah, for taking time out.